I don't know why I'm writing this down. Maybe because saying it out loud feels like inviting it back. Maybe because I need someone, anyone, to know what happened down there. Not the version I told the police. Not the version I told my mother when she called me crying at 3 in the morning asking why I looked different in the photos from the rescue debrief. The real version. The one that starts with a radio. The radio was talking to me. That alone should have been enough to make me leave. But when I picked it up and turned it over in my hands, when I popped open the back casing with my thumb and shone my headlamp inside, there were no batteries, no power source, no explanation. And the voice on the other end had just said my name, not my call sign, not my team designation, not Rescue Unit 2 or Search Team Alpha, the way you talk on radios when you are professional and calm and pretending everything is fine. My name, Marcus. It was quiet, almost gentle, like someone who had been waiting a long time to finally say it. I stood there in the dark, in a tunnel 60 feet below the city, holding a radio with no batteries. And I said nothing back, because something in the part of my brain that is older than language, older than reason, older than everything I had learned in 4 years of search and rescue training, that part knew. That was not Daniel Voss on the radio, and it was not my team. That wasn't even the worst part. I need to tell you about Elliot first. Not because it explains what happened. Nothing explains what happened. But because you need to understand why I was down there. Why I volunteered. Why, when the team coordinator asked for someone willing to go deeper than the mapped section, I raised my hand before he finished the sentence. Elliot was my younger brother. He disappeared 3 years ago. He was 22 years old, and he loved 2 things above everything else: solving problems nobody else wanted to touch, and going places nobody else wanted to go. Abandoned buildings, forgotten tunnels, storm drains at midnight. He called it urban exploration. My mother called it a death wish. I called it every Saturday afternoon for 6 years, because wherever Elliot went, I went too. We were that kind of brothers. The last time I saw him, he was standing in the doorway of his apartment with a backpack over one shoulder, and that specific grin he had. The one that meant he had found something new, something underground, something the city had forgotten about. He said, "Later, Gator." That was it. That was the last thing. 3 years, no body, no answers. Just a missing persons file that gets thinner every year, as the detectives quietly move on to cases they can actually solve. I joined Search and Rescue 8 months after he disappeared. My therapist said it was displacement behavior. My team coordinator said it was one of the best decisions he had ever seen a grieving person make. I don't know which one of them was right. Maybe both, maybe neither. What I know is this: every time I go into the dark looking for someone, part of me is still looking for Elliot. That feeling of walking into darkness and not coming back, I had imagined it so many times. I think Elliot felt it too, that last morning. I think he knew, on some level, that something was different about wherever he was going. I wish he had told me. I wish I had asked. Daniel Voss had been missing for 11 days when our team got the call. He was 34 years old, experienced, careful, the kind of urban explorer who filed documentation, carried multiple light sources, and never went anywhere without telling at least 3 people exactly where he was going and when to expect him back. He was not reckless. He was not a beginner. He had gone into the abandoned metro tunnels beneath the Calloway district, the old pre-war infrastructure that the city sealed off in 1987 and has never fully mapped since. And he had not come out. His documentation was thorough. Entry point, maintenance shaft 7C on Prospect Avenue. Intended route, north tunnel approximately 400 meters, then east at junction marker 14. Intended duration, 4 hours. Expected surface time, 6 p.m. He went in at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. Nobody saw him again. The first 2 search teams had covered the mapped sections, the parts the city actually had blueprints for. They found his equipment cache exactly where he said it would be. They found boot prints. They found a protein bar wrapper and an empty water bottle that forensics confirmed were his. They found no Daniel Voss. Our team, 6 people, experienced, equipped, was tasked with going further into the unmapped section, the part beyond junction marker 14, where Daniel's documented route ended and the unknown began. The coordinator briefed us the night before in a parking garage 2 blocks from the entry shaft. He said, "The air quality gets poor past the 600-meter mark. Masks on before you cross that threshold. Radio contact becomes unreliable past 400 meters. The tunnel walls interfere with the signal. Standard protocol. Maintain voice contact with the person nearest you at all times. If you lose voice contact, stop. Do not proceed alone. Do not." He paused there, which was unusual for him. He was not a man who paused. "Do not follow sounds," he said. "If you hear something that seems like it might be Voss, a voice, movement, anything, do not pursue it independently. You radio in first. You wait for confirmation. Then you move as a unit." Someone asked him why he was being specific about that. He looked at the person who asked for a moment, and then he said, "The acoustics down there are strange. Sound moves in ways that don't make sense." The previous teams reported disorientation. Just follow protocol. He did not say what the previous teams reported beyond disorientation. I noticed that. I filed it away. We went in the next morning at 7 a.m. The maintenance shaft on Prospect Avenue looks like nothing from street level. A gray metal hatch set into the pavement between a parking meter and a storm drain. You would walk past it 1,000 times and never give it a second thought. Below it, a ladder, 12 rungs, dropping into a concrete access corridor that smells like standing water and old metal, and something else I cannot name. Something organic. Something that does not belong in concrete. We descended in order. Team lead first. A woman named Reyes, who had been doing this for 9 years and had the specific kind of calm that only comes from having been genuinely terrified many times and surviving each one. Then Santos, Chen, Park, Whitmore, then me. The hatch closed above us and the city disappeared. That is the thing about going underground that nobody who has not done it can fully prepare for. It is not just the darkness. Your headlamp handles the darkness. It is the absence, the complete and total removal of every ambient sound you have spent your entire life not noticing. No traffic, no wind, no birds, no distant sirens, no refrigerator hum, no radiator click, nothing. Just your own breathing and your own footsteps. And if you are the kind of person who notices these things, your own heartbeat, We moved through the access corridor in single file, headlamps cutting white cones through the black. The mapped section was exactly what the blueprint said it was. Concrete walls, tiled in the pre-war style. Some of the tiles still bearing the faded blue chevron pattern of the original Calloway metro line. Water stains in long brown streaks from ceiling to floor. The occasional abandoned fixture, a defunct electrical panel, a rusted maintenance cart, cables bundled against the wall with ties that had turned brittle and yellow. At 400 meters, Reyes called a radio check. Everyone responded. The signal was weak but readable. And right at that 400-meter mark, whispers, I heard something. I almost didn't register it. It was so faint, so brief, that my brain initially filed under tunnel noise and moved on. But 3 steps later, I stopped walking. Hold, I said. The team stopped. What? Reyes asked. Did anyone else hear that? Silence. 6 people listening. Hear what? Santos asked. I could not explain it precisely. It was not a voice. It was not a sound I had a name for. It was more like the suggestion of a voice, the shape of one, the specific frequency of human speech, stripped of all its words, traveling through concrete and arriving at my ears as something almost unrecognizable. Nothing, I said. Keep moving. Reyes looked at me for a moment. In the headlamp light, her expression was unreadable. We kept moving. We found Daniel Voss's equipment cache at the 520-meter mark, exactly where documented. A red dry bag, clipped to a rusted wall bracket containing spare batteries, a second copy headlamp, an emergency thermal blanket, and a folded paper copy of his route map, the same route map he had submitted to the documentation registry before going in. Reyes photographed everything. We did not move anything. His primary pack is not here, Chen said. He went further, took his main gear. Past Junction 14, Reyes confirmed. Into the unmapped section. Junction marker 14 was 30 meters ahead. A faded stencil on the wall, the number barely legible through decades of water damage. Beyond it, the tunnel branched. Left, continuing north, into the dark. Right, the east passage, narrower, lower ceilinged, angling slightly downward. Daniel's route documentation said, east at Junction 14. We turned east. The ceiling dropped. I am not a tall person, 5 feet 11, and I could feel the concrete above me without raising my hand more than a few inches. Santos, who is 6 feet 3, had to angle his head forward slightly. Nobody complained. We moved. At the 580-meter mark, my radio produced a sound it should not have made. Not static, not the normal fade of a weakening signal. Something else, a tone almost musical, rising and falling in a pattern that felt deliberate, structured, like something trying to resolve into language and not quite getting there. I stopped again. Radio check, I said. Reading you, Reyes said ahead of me. Check, Santos said. Then Chen, Park, Whitmore. Is anyone else getting interference? I asked. A long pause. Negative, Reyes said. Your unit might be malfunctioning. Switch to backup. I switched to my backup radio. Clipped the primary to my vest. Kept walking. 30 seconds later, the primary radio, the one that should have been silent, the one I had switched off, the one clipped to my vest, produced a sound. Not the tone this time, a voice, faint, distant, like someone speaking from the far end of a very long corridor or from the bottom of a very deep hole. I unclipped it, held it right up to my ear. The voice said something I could not make out, almost words, not quite words, and then it said one thing clearly. It said a name, not Daniel Voss, not Reyes, not Santos, not any member of my team. Whispers. It said, Marcus. I stopped walking. The team moved ahead of me by 3 or 4 steps before Whitmore noticed and turned around. Cole, she said. You good? I looked at the radio in my hand. I turned it over. I opened the battery casing. Empty. Yeah, I said. I'm good. I clipped the radio back to my vest. I kept walking, and I did not tell anyone what I had heard or what I had found, because we were 580 meters underground with no GPS and a missing person somewhere ahead of us. And because some part of me, the part that had been looking for Elliot for 3 years, wanted to hear that voice again. We found it at the 640 meter mark. Nobody's documentation mentioned it. Daniel Voss's route map, the one we pulled from his equipment cache, showed nothing at this point except continued east passage. No branches, no features, just tunnel. But there it was, a door, not a maintenance hatch, not a utility panel, an actual door, full height, full width, set into the tunnel wall on the right side, with a frame that looked like it had been installed deliberately, carefully, by someone who knew what they were doing. The wood was dark with age and moisture. The hinges were black iron, old, but not rusted through. There was no handle on our side, just a smooth face of weathered wood, and at eye level, a small rectangular panel of darkness where a window might once have been, now empty. Reyes held up a fist. We stopped. She studied the door for a long moment without speaking. In the silence, I became aware again of how complete the quiet was down here. How the absence of ambient sound made every small thing louder. My own breathing, the faint creak of someone's equipment strap shifting, the distant, almost imperceptible sound of water moving somewhere deep in the concrete. This isn't on any blueprint, Chen said quietly. No, Reyes said. Could Voss have gone through? Reyes crouched and examined the floor with her headlamp. The dust down here was thin, a fine gray layer over the concrete, the kind that accumulates over decades of stillness. There were marks in it, disturbances. Someone had stood here recently. Someone had moved toward the door. Possibly, she said. She stood up. We do not open it yet. We document, we radio in, and we wait for instruction. She keyed her radio. Static. Dense, wall-to-wall static. The kind that doesn't have gaps. The kind that tells you the signal is not just weak, but gone entirely. She tried 3 times. Nothing. We're past reliable range, Santos said. I know. Reyes looked at the door again, then at us. We mark the position. 2 people stay here. 4 continue east to check if the main passage continues. If it dead ends, we come back to the door. If it continues, that was when we heard it. From behind the door, a sound. I want to be precise about this, because I have replayed it in my mind hundreds of times since, and I need to describe it accurately. It was not a knock. It was not a voice. It was the sound of something shifting weight, the specific, unmistakable sound of a person changing position, a foot dragging slightly, a shoulder moving against a wall, the sound of someone who had been very still for a very long time and had just decided to move. We all heard it. I could tell by the way nobody spoke. Reyes held up one finger. Wait. We waited. 10 seconds, 15, 20, nothing. Then whispers, faint, almost too faint to be sure of. Breathing from the other side of the door, slow, measured. The breathing of someone conscious, someone present. Someone approximately 18 inches away from us, on the other side of a very old piece of wood. "Voss?" Reyes said, loud and clear. "Daniel Voss. This is search and rescue. If you can hear me, respond." "Silence, Daniel. If you are injured and cannot speak, knock twice." "Silence, then. One knock. Just one." Reyes looked at Santos. Santos looked at me. I looked at the door. "Mr. Voss, we are going to open the door. Stay back from the entrance if you can." She reached out and pressed her palm flat against the wood. She pushed. The door swung inward slowly, silently, the hinges, despite their age, making almost no sound, as if they had been oiled recently. And the darkness beyond it was total. Our headlamps cut into it and found a room, small, maybe 4 meters by 4 meters, concrete walls, concrete floor, concrete ceiling, no other exits, no windows, no fixtures of any kind except for a single metal bracket on the far wall at about chest height, and nothing else. No Daniel Voss, no person, no source for the breathing we had all heard, no explanation for the knock. Reyes stepped inside, swept her light across every corner, every surface, nothing. The room was completely, utterly empty. "Clear," she said. Her voice was flat, controlled. The voice of someone who has decided not to react until later. I stood in the doorway and looked at the metal bracket on the far wall. Something was hanging from it, a single key. Old, iron, the kind with a large circular bow and a simple cut pattern. The kind that looks like it belongs to something much older than anything that should still exist. It hung from the bracket on a loop of thin wire. Beneath it, scratched into the concrete wall in letters that looked like they had been made with something sharp. A knife, a rock, the edge of a tool, were 4 words. "Do not go deeper." I stared at those words for a long time. I did not touch the key. We left the room. Reyes pulled the door shut behind us. Nobody spoke for almost a full minute as we stood in the tunnel and processed what we had and had not found. Finally, Park said, "The knock." "I know," Reyes said. "We all heard it. I know. There was nobody in there." "I know," she said. "Keep moving." We continued east. The tunnel narrowed further, shoulders now brushing the walls on both sides for anyone wider than me, which was most of the team. The ceiling stayed low. The floor began to angle downward, subtly at first, and then, noticeably, the kind of grade that you feel in your knees before your eyes register the slope. We were going deeper. At the 700-meter mark, my backup radio, the one I had switched to after the primary malfunctioned, the one that had been functioning normally since, produced a voice. Clear, close, as if the person speaking was standing directly beside me. It was Reyes. "Cole, fall back to junction 14. We're pulling out." I stopped. Reyes was 4 meters ahead of me. I could see her headlamp. I could see her back. Her radio was on her vest. She had not raised it. She had not spoken. I looked at the radio in my hand. "Say again," I said. "Fall back to junction 14. There's something behind you. Don't turn around. Just walk." I looked ahead at the real Reyes. She had stopped and turned around. She was looking at me with her headlamp pointed slightly down, the way she did when she wanted to see your face without blinding you. "Cole," she said, not from the radio, from 4 meters away. "Why have you stopped?" I looked at the radio. I looked at her. "Someone just spoke to me on this radio," I said, "using your voice." The team closed in, everyone within 2 meters, everyone looking at the radio in my hand. "What did they say?" Reyes asked. I told her. "Silence." "Your backup unit," Santos said. "Could it be picking up a recording?" "Some kind of." "There's no signal down here," Chen said. "We established that. There's nothing to pick up." "Then where is the voice coming from?" Park said. Nobody answered, because there was no answer that made sense. I thought about the primary radio with no batteries. I thought about my name in the static. I thought about how the voice on the backup unit had known not just my name, not just my team leady's name, but the specific, correct protocol language. Fall back to Junction 14. That was our designated rally point. That was information that existed in our team briefing documents, in our coordinators' files, in the specific operational plan for this search. Information that had no business being inside a tunnel that had been sealed for 37 years. "We keep moving," Reyes said. "The voice said there was something behind me," I said. "It said, 'Don't turn around.'" "A beat." "Did you?" Whitmore asked. I had not. I realized this as she asked it. In the moment, instinctively, I had not turned around. I turned around now. The tunnel behind us was empty. Headlamp light reaching back 40-50 meters before the darkness swallowed it. Concrete walls, concrete floor, nothing. "Clear," I said. But here is the thing about that moment that I have not been able to stop thinking about since. The voice said, "Don't turn around." And the first time it happened, the first time I heard it, I didn't. Not because I was following the instruction, because some part of me, below the level of conscious decision, had agreed with it, had known somehow that turning around was the wrong choice. I have spent a long time trying to decide whether that instinct protected me, or whether it was the first moment something started working on me from the inside, steering me, guiding me towards something I did not choose. I still don't have an answer. At the 750-meter mark, Chen's headlamp failed. Not gradually, not the slow dimming that tells you batteries are going. It simply stopped. One moment, light. Next moment, nothing. He tapped it, checked the battery seal, and swapped to his backup. The backup produced a weak, yellowish glow that was better than nothing, and not much more. "Primary's dead," he said. Batteries were new this morning. Nobody commented on this. We kept moving. At the 780-meter mark, Park stopped and said, "Does anyone else hear footsteps?" We stopped. We listened. I heard it. Footsteps, or something close enough to footsteps that my brain filed them there by default. A rhythmic sound, soft, coming from behind us. The specific cadence of someone walking, not running, not shuffling, but walking. Deliberate, unhurried, the pace of someone who was not trying to catch up because they knew they didn't need to. "Sound travels strangely down here," Reyes said. "It could be our own echo." "It's not our echo," Park said. "We're standing still." We were standing still. The footsteps were not. They continued for approximately 4 seconds after we stopped. Then they stopped too. "Formation," Reyes said quietly. "Close up." Nobody falls more than 1 arm's length behind the person in front. We closed up, 6 people in a line, almost touching, moving through the narrowing tunnel with our lights forward. The footsteps did not return, but something else did. Pant breathing. The same breathing we had heard behind the door, slow, measured, deliberate, now present in the tunnel itself. Not from one direction, not from behind or ahead, from everywhere, from the walls, from the concrete, as if the tunnel itself had developed a respiratory system. I am aware of how that sounds. I am telling you what I experienced. I pulled my headlamp off the forward tunnel and pointed it at the wall beside me. And for one fraction of 1 second, I thought I saw something in the texture of the concrete. A shape, the suggestion of a form, shoulders, a head, long arms pressed flat against the surface, as if something had pressed itself into the wall and was waiting there. I blinked. Concrete. Just concrete. Coal. Whitmore's voice was close behind me. Keep your light forward. Sorry, I said. I kept my light forward. But for every step of the next 100 meters, I felt the specific cellular certainty of being watched from behind. Not anxiety, something more physical than that. The way the air changes when someone stands close to you. The way the hairs on your arms respond to a presence before your eyes can confirm it. I did not turn around again. I have thought about that choice many times since. I wonder sometimes if it was still a choice at that point. At the 850-meter mark, I heard my name. Not from the radio this time. Not from any piece of equipment. From the tunnel. Ahead of us, slightly to the right. Approximately the distance of 2 or 3 meters, close enough that if someone was standing there, our headlamps should have found them. Our headlamps found nothing, but the voice said, "Marcus." And then, half a second later, more quietly, as if the speaker had moved further away without moving at all, "You came." I said nothing. I did not tell my team. I filed it in the same place I had filed the batteryless radio. And the knock from the empty room, and the footsteps that stopped when we stopped. I was building a picture. I did not yet know what the picture was. But I was starting to understand that whatever was down here had known I was coming before I arrived, and that it was not surprised to see me. At the 900-meter mark, the tunnel opened. Without warning, without transition, one step, we were in the narrow passage with the low ceiling and the walls close enough to touch, and the next step, we were in a space so large our headlamps couldn't find the far wall. A chamber, underground, pre-war construction. From the look of the tiling, the same blue chevron pattern as the mapped sections. But here covering entire walls, floor to ceiling, extending up into a vaulted ceiling that our lights reached only partially. The space was perhaps 30 meters wide, and I estimated 40 or 50 meters long, though in the dark it was difficult to be certain. It felt like a cathedral. It felt like the inside of something that had been waiting. In the center of the chamber floor, directly in the center, as if placed there by someone with a measuring tape and a great deal of time, was Daniel Voss's primary pack. Just the pack, open, contents spread around it in a rough circle. His secondary light source, his water supply partially consumed, his documentation folder open to his route map. No Daniel Voss. Reyes moved toward it. The rest of us followed, spreading out slightly as the space allowed. I lagged behind. Because I had seen something else, on the wall to my left, at exactly eye level, as if positioned for someone of my specific height. Something was scratched into the tile in the same deliberate, sharp strokes as the writing on the room back at the door. Not words this time, a symbol. I know how to describe it because I have seen it before. Many times. Drawn in pencil on the back pages of school notebooks, scratched into the wood of a childhood desk, traced absently in condensation on a car window during long drives. A circle bisected by a vertical line, with a small horizontal dash through the lower half of the vertical, like a cross but asymmetric, like a cross that had been modified, like a cross that meant something specific to the person who drew it. Eliot's symbol, his signature, the mark he put on things that mattered to him: notebooks, maps, the inside covers of books he loved. I had seen it 10,000 times in my life, and I would know it anywhere, in any darkness. Eliot's symbol was scratched into the wall of an underground chamber that no one had officially entered in 37 years. I stood there and looked at it for a long time. My team was 20 meters away, cataloging Daniel Voss's scattered equipment, calling to each other in low professional voices, doing their jobs with the focused efficiency of people who have been trained to find the task and stay inside it. I pressed my fingers against the scratch tile. The mark was not new. The edges of the scratches had the slightly rounded, smoothed quality of age. Not decades, but months. Maybe a year, maybe more. Eliot disappeared 3 years ago. He was never linked to these tunnels. He never mentioned them in any documentation I had seen, in any conversation I remembered. The investigators who worked his case found no evidence he had ever been in the Calloway district. But he had been here. He had stood in this exact spot. He had marked this wall. And something, the same something that had been speaking to me since the 580-meter mark, the something that knew my name and my team's rally point and the sound of my team lead's voice, had led me here, had wanted me to find this. I understood, standing there with my fingers on my dead brother's mark in the wall of a chamber 60 feet underground, that I was not on a rescue operation anymore. I was the target. I had been the target from the beginning, and whatever had drawn me here, whatever had learned enough about me to use my name, my team's language, my missing brother's symbol, I could feel it. Not behind me, not ahead, around me, was still in this room, like the walls had eyes. Like the dark between my headlamp beam and the far wall was not empty space, but something that had learned to look like empty space. I took my hand off the wall. I turned to rejoin my team. And that was when Reyes said, from across the chamber, in a completely normal voice, "Good news. I think I've got Voss. He's conscious. He's at the far end." And something in the tone, something I could not name, something below the level of words, made every hair on my body stand up at once. Because that was Reyes's voice. It had her cadence, her diction, her precise, controlled delivery. But the radio, her radio, the one on her vest, had not moved, and she was looking at me from 20 meters away, and her mouth was not open. I did not react. That is the thing I am most grateful for. Looking back, that whatever training lives in the body below the level of conscious thought kept my face still and my voice level and my feet moving forward at the same pace they had been moving before. I crossed the chamber toward the rest of my team. Reyes was standing at the far end near a section of wall where the blue chevron tiles had partially collapsed inward, creating a shallow alcove. Santos was beside her. Chen and Park were still near Daniel Voss's pack, documenting Whitmore, was between them and me. Reyes's mouth was closed. Her radio was on her vest. She was looking at me with the calm, assessing expression she wore when she was trying to read a situation. "What did you say?" I asked her, quietly, conversationally. The way you ask someone to repeat something because you didn't quite hear it over background noise. "I haven't said anything," she said. "You were standing at the wall. I was watching you." "Someone said you found Voss," I said, "that he's conscious, at the far end." A silence that lasted exactly as long as it needed to. "That wasn't me," she said. We looked at each other. In 9 years of working searches, Reyes had never once let uncertainty reach her face. It was one of the things I most respected about her. That specific, earned composure that comes from having looked at terrible things and chosen every time to stay functional. Her face right now was not entirely composed. "We need to find Voss and we need to leave," she said. "Everyone in visual contact with someone else. Nobody speaks unless they are certain it is them speaking. If you hear a voice and you are not sure, you stop, you make visual contact, you confirm." "Understood?" Everyone confirmed. We moved to the far end of the chamber. There was a passage there, narrower than the one we had come through, lower ceilinged, angling further downward. And there, seated against the left wall, with his knees drawn up and his head tilted back against the concrete, was a man. Daniel Voss, 34 years old, medium height, wearing the gear documented in his entry report. Headlamp dead, face pale and drawn in the beam of our lights, the specific grayish pallor of someone who has been in the dark a long time. But conscious, eyes open, tracking us as we approached. "Mr. Voss," Reyes said, crouching in front of him. "Daniel, can you hear me?" He looked at her. He did not speak. "Are you injured? Can you tell me where you're hurt?" His eyes moved from Reyes to Santos, to Chen, to Park, to Whitmore. They stopped on me. He looked at me for a long time. Then, very quietly, in a voice that was cracked and dry and barely more than a whisper, he said, "It learned how to sound like someone you love." I went completely still. "How long have you been here?" Reyes asked him. Professional, steady. Filing what he had said in the same place. We had all been filing things since we came underground. He didn't answer her. He was still looking at me. "It listened first," he said. "It listened for a long time before it tried to speak. And when it tried, he stopped, swallowed. The first attempts were wrong. The voice was wrong. The words were right, but something underneath them was wrong, and I could feel it. The same way you can feel a note that's slightly off key, even if you can't name the note. "Mr. Voss, we need to." But it got better, he said. "The longer I was here, the better it got. It learned from my reactions. It learned what worked and what didn't. It learned which voices made me want to move and which ones made me stop." He paused. "I stopped talking after the third day. I thought if I stopped responding, it would stop learning." "Did it?" I asked. He looked right into my eyes. "No," he said. "It just found other sources." The team began preparing to move him. Reyes and Santos on either side, helping him to his feet. Assessment: dehydrated, weakened, no obvious structural injuries. We had a route out, we had working lights, we had everything we needed. I looked back at the chamber behind us. 30 meters of darkness. Our headlamps pointed forward into the passage toward Voss and the exit route beyond. Behind us, the chamber, the pack, the scattered equipment. Elliot's symbol on the wall, just visible at the edge of where the light reached. "Let's go," Reyes said. We went. The walkout should have taken 40 minutes. I know the distance. I know our pace. I have done this calculation many times since, and the numbers are always the same. 900 meters out, moving carefully with an injured person, 40 minutes. It took us longer, not because we got lost, not because we took wrong turns. The route was the same route we had come in on, the same tunnel, the same junction marker, the same access corridor leading back to the ladder and the hatch and the street above. But somewhere around the 600-meter mark on the way back, Reyes stopped. "Radio check," she said. Everyone responded. I responded. She counted again. "That's 7, she said. There were 6 of us. There had been 6 of us since we went in, 5 team members plus Daniel Voss, who was between Reyes and Santos and had not spoken since the chamber. "Count again," Santos said. She counted again. 7 voices, 7 responses to the radio check. We stood in the tunnel and looked at each other in the headlamp light. 5 team members, 1 rescued civilian, 6 people. "Everyone sound off by name," Reyes said. "Physically, not radio. Yo, out, loud." We sounded off. 6 names. She waited, then gasped from somewhere in the dark behind us, from the tunnel we had just walked through, from the empty passage at our backs. A 7th voice said my name. Whispers Marcus. The same way it had said it at the 580-meter mark the first time. Quiet, almost gentle, patient. Like something that had all the time in the world. Like something that had already gotten what it came for and was simply saying goodbye. "Move," Reyes said. We moved. We did not stop again until we reached the ladder. I am going to tell you what I think it was. Not what the debrief report says. The debrief report says acoustic anomalies consistent with tunnel resonance and psychological stress responses in team members, and uses the word disorientation 6 times in 4 pages. I signed that report. I put my name on it. I said what I was supposed to say in the language I was supposed to use, because there are systems that require certain words and cannot accommodate others. This is not that report. This is what I actually believe. I think it was old. I do not mean years. I do not mean the 37 years since the tunnel was sealed, or the pre-war construction of the chamber, or the century-old tile on the walls. I mean a different kind of old. The kind of old that doesn't have a human unit of measurement. The kind that was present in the dark before the tunnel was built around it. Before the city was built above it. Before there were people to build cities at all. I think it lived in the space between things, in the specific quality of silence that exists in sealed underground places, the silence that isn't absence but accumulation. Every sound that ever entered that tunnel and never got out. Every voice that spoke down there and didn't return. I think it learned the way very old, very patient things learn. By waiting, by listening, by collecting. Not malicious, not a predator, exactly. More like a mirror. Something that had absorbed so much of the human voices that passed through it over so long a time, that it had developed the ability to reflect them back, to reconstruct them, to deploy them with increasing accuracy. And the longer you were there, the more it had of you. Daniel Voss had been there 11 days. By the time we found him, it had had 11 days of his voice, his reactions, his fears, his silences. 11 days of learning which words made him move and which made him stop. 11 days of practice. We were there for hours, but I had been feeding it longer than that. That is what Voss was trying to tell me when he said it found other sources. It had been listening to my grief for 3 years. I don't know how. I don't know the mechanism. I only know that when I walked into that tunnel, it already knew my name, my team's protocols, my supervisor's voice, and my dead brother's symbol. It had been building a picture of me from the outside for a very long time. And when I finally came underground, it was ready. I do not know what it wanted. I don't think want is the right word for what it did. I think it was completing something. A collection. I think every voice it had ever learned, every name it had absorbed, every grief it had reconstructed. I think they were all still down there, in the walls, in the silence, waiting in the dark the way very old, very patient things wait. Not for rescue, not for escape, simply existing the way sounds exist in a sealed room, long after the room has been locked. I think Elliot is down there, not his body, something else. The part of him that went into the dark and learned, too late, the first rule of underground places. The dark listens back. 3 days after the rescue, I found something in my jacket pocket. Not a jacket I had worn underground. The gear from the operation had been logged and returned according to protocol. This was my regular jacket, the one I wore home from the debrief. The one that had been hanging in my apartment hallway while I was underground, while I was in the debrief room, while I was giving my signed statement with its 6 uses of the word disorientation. In the left pocket where I keep nothing, where there was nothing when I put it on. There was a key, old iron, large circular bow, simple cut pattern. The key from the bracket in the room at the 640-meter mark. The one beneath the words, "Do not go deeper," the one I had not touched. I held it in my hands for a long time. I thought about calling Reyes. I thought about calling the coordinator. I thought about going back to the debrief report, adding a footnote, a line, some official language that could contain this small iron object and file it somewhere. It wouldn't require me to think about it anymore. I did none of those things. I set it on my kitchen table. I made coffee. I sat across from it and looked at it the way you look at a thing that has no explanation. Not searching for the explanation anymore, just acknowledging the shape of the space where the explanation should be. And then my phone rang. My mother. 3 a.m. crying, the specific, exhausted, I have been holding this in all day kind of crying that I knew the sound of the way I knew the sound of my own breathing. Marcus. I don't know why I'm calling. I had a dream about Elliot, a strange one. He was underground somewhere, and he seemed fine. He seemed calm. He said something, and I can't remember most of it. I can barely remember any of it. But there was one part. She stopped. "Mom," I said. What did he say? Silence on the line. Just her breathing and the small night sounds of her house and the distance between us. He said to tell you that it's not so dark once you get used to it. I looked at the key on my table. I did not speak. "Marcus, are you there?" "I'm here," I said. "Does that mean anything to you?" The key sat there in the kitchen light. Old iron, dull and dark and absolutely, completely still. "No," I said. I don't know why I lied to her. I think I needed it not to mean anything for a little while longer. I think I needed one more night of not knowing for certain. I still have the key. It sits on my nightstand now. I don't know why I moved it from the table. I don't know why I keep it at all. I could throw it away. I could drop it in the river. I could put it in a box and tape the box shut and drive it to the other side of the city. I don't. I look at it every night before I turn off the light. I have thought about going back. I have thought about it more than I am comfortable admitting. Not to look for answers. I think I am past believing answers are available. But because of the way Voss looked at me in the chamber when we found him, the specific thing he was trying to communicate in those first moments, we for the rescue protocols took over, and everyone became professional and focused and stopped listening to him. He had been down there 11 days. He had listened to it learn. And when he saw me, when he looked at my face in the headlamp light, the first thing he said was not thank you, and not help me, and not I knew someone would come. He said, it learned how to sound like someone you love. He was warning me, he was telling me it had already done it before I arrived, that whatever I had heard in that tunnel, whatever had spoken to me in voices it had no right to know. The most effective version was still ahead of me, the version I hadn't heard yet. And I have spent every night since wondering whether my mother's dream was hers, whether the voice that spoke to her in sleep, that gave her the message, that sounded like Elliot, the way Elliot always sounded, was patient enough to wait until I was above ground, whether it is still learning, whether the walls of that tunnel go further than the walls of that tunnel, whether the dark that listened to me for hours while I was underground has found other ways to listen now that I am gone. I told you at the beginning that I don't know why I'm writing this down. That was honest. But I think it is because writing it down is the only way I know to put something outside of myself, to make it exist in the world instead of only in my head, to give it edges, borders, somewhere it ends, and the rest of things begin. I am afraid that this thing does not have those. I am afraid there are no edges. I am afraid that the last thing Elliot ever truly said to me was later, Gator, as he stood in that doorway with his backpack and that unforgettable grin. I'm afraid that everything since then, every phantom echo of his voice, every fleeting sense of his presence waiting just beyond the edge of my headlamp, has been something else entirely. Whispers, something wearing his shape, mimicking his words, getting better at it every single day. The light is still on in my room. I'm going to leave it on. If this story made you look twice into the shadows tonight, make sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and leave a comment below with your own theories on what is truly hiding in the unmapped dark. Don't let the fire go out. I'll see you in the next nightmare.